The next edition of the Connor and Heffernan Show, Season 3. My name is Mark, my co-host Montana here. There's a lot of interesting and exciting things to talk about in the world of sports right now. Obviously, football is underway. We've got, is it now week 3 of the NFL? Which is crazy. The season's already going by so fast and it just started. Let's kick things off with something interesting. So, obviously, week 1 with the Jets, there was so much hype surrounding him with Aaron Rodgers and all the pieces that they brought in. Well, like 4 seconds into his debut with the Jets, he tore his Achilles. And the Jets quarterback room is not phenomenal. Obviously, losing Rodgers is going to be a detriment to that offense. I think if Rodgers was in there right now, that offense had the potential to be very dangerous this year. Let's kick things off here. Do you think the Jets should stay with Zach Wilson, or do you think they should try and go pick someone up during free agency or something? Someone who's a little bit more proven?
I mean, here's the thing about picking someone up that's more proven. At this point, you're not going to get one of the names that really would make a difference. And Aaron Rodgers is coming back whenever that may be. McAfee is going to try to make the ratings. He's going to say, oh, Aaron Rodgers might come back. Aaron Rodgers is going to try to make the ratings. He's going to hint at coming back even yet this year, even if it's playoff time. That's not happening. At his age, for his injury, there's no way we're seeing him this year. But he is still going to be the Jets quarterback. That is still going to be the case. They are not going to try to get a star. They're not going to try to trade for a Kirk Cousins when Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming back. Unless something changes drastically, he will play for the Jets at least by next season. I'm not thinking he's going to come back early. I think that was just for the ratings, for his image of being whatever, this mysterious guy that's like a leader, and he does all these like mysterious ways to heal up and all these things. Like, he wants to be that guy. He wants to be the smartest guy in the room, the coolest guy. That's just who he is. I get that. It's all good, but he's not coming back this year. There's no way that we're going to see Aaron Rodgers play for the Jets. Even if they make it all the way to the Super Bowl, he's not coming back, suiting up, walking out of that tunnel for the Super Bowl. They're not even going to make it that far. But they need to stick with who they have. And I still think they could make the playoffs with who they have, with their team they have now. They're a wild card team at best without Rodgers, and they might not even be that. But I still think they have a shot. I don't think you go out and look for a quarterback. Here's what I'm going to say. I don't want to turn this into something where we're hating on anybody, because that's never going to be what we do here. Even if it's an athlete that's never going to see this, we're not going to be doing that. But Colin Kaepernick was like, he's one of the first quarterbacks that was like, I need this. This is like every single time there's a team that has an opening, he throws his name out there, and every single time the team publicly says that they're not even looking at him, pretty much, essentially. So Kaepernick threw his name in the ring. We all know how that's going to go. We all know how that's always going to go. I don't think we're ever going to see him suit up again. And it has nothing to do with, I get it, but it has to, he's not a good quarterback. He's not a good. He was not. He had a couple of decent, sort of okay seasons, but he was surrounded by a great team. Mm-hmm. His last season in the NFL was terrible, and it wasn't the kneeling. It was when you had the football in his hand. Okay, it was when he was on the field playing the game. That's when it was bad, in my opinion. That's when he was at his worst. So for me, I don't think he's ever. It has nothing to do with anything else. It just has to do, he's not a good quarterback. So that's hilarious to me. The Kirk Cousins mock-up trade is hilarious because there's just no way that's happening. So I say you stick with who you have, hold off until Aaron Rodgers, and you try to go for a Super Bowl run next year. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. The whole Aaron Rodgers situation is tough because he's in his 40s right now. And he tore his Achilles tendon. That is a very tough injury to come back from. Do I think he can make a comeback? Yes. My whole thing is Zach Wilson going to be the guy to lead this team to where they want to be? And I don't think he's that guy. Could he keep them competitive? Maybe. But I pulled up a article from Pro Football Talk, and obviously his first start didn't go very well. The Jets ended up losing. And they even went to mention, like, the Jets play the Patriots, I think, this week. And his past outing against the Patriots last year, he ended up going 9 of 22, 77 yards in a 10-3 loss that got him benched. He needs to be a lot better and smarter with the ball if the Jets offense wants to be what they want to be, even without Rodgers. It's not going to be what they want it to be without Rodgers. Let's just be real. They need to fold a formula for Wilson to succeed. They need to put him in a position to succeed rather than have him go out there and try and make all the plays. I do think they could potentially be a wild card team, but I don't think they're going to make it much past the wild card round at this point. And I think they need to start, I wouldn't say start pouring all their cards, but, maybe look at pouring all their cards into next season and potentially being a Super Bowl contender. I think if they can get Rodgers back healthy and he stays healthy, I think the Jets will be just that.
Well, yeah, I think that for me, I always thought it was going to take them a season anyway. And I also think that they could get some more players in the offseason that could really strengthen that team. So I think that their best bet is winning it next year anyway. I think this would have been their year to get maybe close, but I don't think they were winning it even with Rodgers this year. I think they definitely would have gotten a lot farther, but Wilson is not a great quarterback. It's no secret. When he was benched, his teammates were visibly happy. I'm sorry. The fans were visibly happy. This is not a guy that was built to be in this position, but in my personal opinion, it's the guy that needs to be in it, because I think that it's a lot easier path out if you don't try to trade for someone and if you don't look into that free agent pool or call anyone up. It's not going to benefit them in the long run. I think they need to stick with who they have, and then, like you said, put your cards in for next year and focus on next year, because this year's done. No matter what, even if they make the wild card, their Super Bowl hopes are not going to come to fruition this year. So it's time to look towards the future and go for that. And hopefully Rodgers makes a recovery. I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan, but it was really sad seeing that be the way his season ended. And some people were worried the way his career ended, but I do think we'll see him back out there. And the Jets, maybe we still see them kicking it during wild card time. We'll see. But moving on to an interesting topic. This is one that we could have talked about in the first episode. We could have talked about last year. We could have talked about this really at any time, but it's very apparent at this moment, the running back situation in the NFL. And what I mean by that is there is a very real disconnect between what running backs think they should be making and what they are making, and the contracts that they're getting and the contracts they think they should be getting. So something that kind of ruins their argument is exactly what's happened this season, which is Dobbins has gone down, Chubbs is down, and Eckler's down. That is three high-profile running backs, especially the first two I said. Chubb and Dobbins are big. Now, Eckler is big too, but those are three high-profile, big-name running backs that it's going to affect their offense. It's going to affect their team having them gone. So my question to you is, even with these injuries, are the running backs' frustrations valid, or are the organization's approach and is an organization's cautious approach with paying running backs, does it make sense, especially when we have the evidence of injuries right in front of us? What is your thought on this? Because it's been ongoing. It's an ongoing thing. So what are your thoughts on this before and now?
I don't agree with the organization very much, but I do agree with them here. Running back is one of the most taxing positions on the field, outside of being a lineman. I think them being cautious on paying these running backs is very much well warranted because of this. Because you pay, a Dobbins, a Chubb, an Eckler, say a quarter of $1 billion across like 8 years or something like that. And they get hurt and they're doing nothing and they're still making that money. Like they need to have a full season's worth of performances in order for them to be warranted that money. So I agree with not overpaying due to injury. Because running backs are injury prone. That's just the whole stick of it. It is one of the most taxing positions on the field. Because you're running in between the tackles. You are getting absolutely walloped when you cross the line of scrimmage at some point. So, yeah, it was a tough conversation before because, man, there are some really good running backs that are worth a lot of money in the NFL. They're not worth the money that they're trying to get, though, because of this situation. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you kind of align with my thought process, or are you kind of opposite?
Well, the thing about this is, honestly, there's a lot of moments on this show when, this isn't a debate show. It's never supposed to be a debate show, but there's no debate on a lot of things we talk about because we are 100% on the same page with this. My thinking for this is, yeah, running back, like you said, it's taxing, physically taxing, and it is one of the most skilled positions, especially on the offensive side. You could argue it is, and currently it is evolving. The position is evolving, and you're seeing the running back used for more than just running between the tackles. Now you're seeing the more successful teams utilizing. It's not another receiver, but it very well should be sometimes with the way that teams utilize their backs. So the position is evolving, but still, the bulk of that position, running between the tackles, trying to break tackles, trying to get extra yardage, trying to fight for those short yardage touchdowns, trying to fight for those short yardage first. There's so many different things that the running back does. But, and this might be controversial, this might come off the wrong way, you don't need a great running back to win a football game. Let's look at the Titans. What have they won? They arguably have the best in Derrick Henry. How many times have they been to the Super Bowl with him? None.
Yeah.
Not at all. They haven't even gotten that close, in my personal opinion.
And Henry's had good years.
Great years where he's led the league, where he's been fantastic. We have seen the best running backs be on teams that either only make the wild card or don't even make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot say that with the best quarterbacks, with the best receivers. Those players are the players that are winning games. So
it's
I'm not
a quarterback-centric league.
Exactly. It's never been a running back-centered league, but I will say it used to be more balanced before, but it is 100% a quarterback-centered league, and backs are not going to get paid what they want, what they think they deserve. I hope for everybody involved that the position and the pay can evolve together. And as the position evolves, because like I said, I think the position is evolving past running just between the backs and running, trying to outrun people and trying to get through and trying to find the right pocket. I think it's growing beyond that. And you're seeing the teams that are the most successful utilizing the backs beyond just running. It's being turned into a whole different skill position, in my personal opinion. So I think that we're going to see more of that, and hopefully with that we see the pay also increase with that, because then it is a position that maybe will be less injury prone. It'll be a position that's utilized better. So as the position evolves and is maybe utilized differently, I do think that maybe we will see the pay evolve as well, and that's a good thing. But I'm with you. I mean, with how it is now, there's no reason that they should be making more, and they're already getting pretty solid contracts. They shouldn't be getting quarterback money. There's no reason that they should even think that. So honestly, I really hope that those backs can recover. I know that Dobbins and Chubbs are both out for the season. Eckler's not. I don't think Eckler is out for the season, but I know that the Dobbins and Chubbs definitely are. So
Yeah.
hopefully those teams can figure it out. Those are very crucial parts of those teams and those offenses, but they'll figure it out because once again, both the Browns and the Ravens have more than just those backs. They've got pretty solid quarterbacks, whatever you think of them off the field with a quarterback like Watson, that is what it is. But on the field, a pretty solid quarterback. You've got two solid quarterbacks, solid receivers, solid tight ends. They're going to be fine. And that is why it's not a running back league. It's not a league where that position is going to make or break it. So honestly, I'm with you, man. And I hope that as the position evolves, the pay will for their sake as well. But as of now, there's some solid contracts out there. And for the amount of injuries that we see with backs every single season, come on now. I mean, we'd be paying for their hospital bills at that point. That's really what that is. So it doesn't
Pretty
make
much.
sense it doesn't take too much sense to ramp that up. So anyways, moving on we've got two more NFL topics to talk about, two more interesting ones. Our next one is a really interesting topic, and that is Tyreek Hill. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins off to a fantastic start. They look as good as they did at the beginning of last season, if not a million times better in a lot of ways. Tua is going off. They look great. The question is, will Tyreek Hill be the first ever wide receiver to win MVP? Because yes, there has never been a wide receiver, no Jerry Rice, no Megatron. There's never been a receiver to win regular season MVP in the NFL. Will Tyreek Hill be the first receiver to win this season? Is this the year? Is he the player? What are your thoughts?
He's really good. I tell you what, September 10th against the Chargers, he had an MVP caliber game, 11 receptions, 215 yards. He averaged 19 and a half yards a catch, 47-yard catch, and 2 touchdowns. And he's super hard to defend. He runs a 4.29 40, which is faster than most of the players in the NFL. The dude is he's incredibly fast. Now, he did struggle up against the Patriots a little bit. He had five receptions for 40 yards, averaged 8 yards a catch. 15 was his longest with 1 touchdown. So he needs to pad up more games like he did against the Chargers this year. If he can do that, I think he very well could win the MVP, because if he averages over 200 yards receiving a game, you might as well just hand him the trophy before the season's even done. That's my whole thought. He 16 receptions, 255 yards, averaging 16 yards a catch, 3 touchdowns to start this young season. Pretty solid stats to start things out. He just needs to continue improving up on the, stats up against the Patriots or whatever, because I don't think 5 receptions, 40 yards is going to do very much. So, yeah, if he can just improve on the little things against some of these other teams, I think the MVP could very well be his, even though it is a quarterback-centric league. And we've seen just quarterbacks win the MVP year after year after year. Even though there are other deserving players. Like Derrick Henry a few years ago should have won the MVP as a running back, but he didn't. He was overlooked by quarterbacks and stuff like that. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on Tyreek Hill? Do you think he has the potential to be that MVP wide receiver MVP to kind of break the reins of the quarterbacks a little bit?
If there's going to be someone to do it, it's him. I think we talked last episode about that top 10 list, and Tyreek Hill was not on that top 10 list. You know who was Justin Jefferson. But I think that Tyreek Hill so far, he's the best receiver this season. Even with that, more lax performance against the Patriots, that was still a performance that had somewhat of an impact. It did impact the score of the game. And I think he's going to go off next game. I really do. I think that he is a player that, first of all, hard to even just catch because of his speed. And second of all, his elusiveness, not his speed, his elusiveness is what is super impressive, because we've seen him slide around defenders. We've seen him. It's not just his speed. Yes, his speed is impressive, but it's more than just that. And I think that he is the most skilled receiver in the NFL so far this season. Now that can change, but I don't think it's that close, because his first game was legendary. That was MVP. That there's a reason that he's in this MVP talk, and it was really that first game. He put the league on notice, and I don't think he's done with just that first game.
Right.
They'll always give it to, you already said this, they'll always give it to the quarterback. And a good receiver is only as good as the quarterback that they have. I mean, honestly, we could see Tyreek Hill. Let's put him with the Titans. He's not even going to get an MVP look. And that's because his quarterback isn't going to be able to complete half of his passes to Hill. Even if Hill is open and ready, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to complete their passes to him. You have to have the right quarterback. So far, he's had Tua, which in my opinion is an underrated quarterback, and he's had Patrick Mahomes, which is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So he has had a good situation for quarterback. I'm not saying that's the reason he's so great. He's great beyond that. He would still get it done with a mediocre quarterback. But in order to be the player that's getting looked at as MVP, and also just a player that's in the hunt for the playoffs and an AFC title, you have to have that quarterback and receiver pairing. Luckily, Miami has it, and it goes beyond just Hill. Hill is by far the best receiver, but you've got Waddle. You have options in Miami, and you have a dangerous offense. But Hill is the cherry on top for that offense, and he is by far that team's player that puts them a step above other teams in the AFC especially. So I think Hill is great. I think that if there is a receiver that's going to win it, it is going to be him. But if Miami stays in it and Tua stays healthy, I think Tua is going to be the MVP. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that Tua is deserving of it, as deserving as Tyreek Hill would be. But I also think between the two, they'd give it to Tua for sure. My one thing is, if Tua gets injured and it's like 6 games left in the season, 8 games left in the season, and the backup comes in and Hill keeps balling, they'd give the MVP to Tyreek Hill. They'd give the MVP to, they wouldn't give it to the backup quarterback. And they wouldn't give it to Tua, because they don't give it to quarterbacks that miss 8+ games. So it definitely would go to Hill if Tua gets injured. But then again, if Tua gets injured, who's to say that they're even going to be able to keep winning games? Who's to be able to say that they're even going to, like, they're not going to give the MVP to someone that is on a losing team. So it's also, it goes beyond just the stats. It always has. So it's really interesting. It's always been something that, again, has gone beyond just the stats. It goes to who's winning, the team makeup, everything. So good for the Dolphins being in the mix this season, being able to be talked about as that team, because that has not been the case consistently. So good for them. But moving on to our final NFL topic, and oh my goodness, I'm gonna be honest, bro. I really don't want to talk about this, but we do need to talk about this.
Yeah.
We will talk Cowboys football as little as possible. Little as possible. I when I wrote this in, I almost deleted it, but I kept it in. I stayed strong. Today's Cowboy topic is, are the Cowboys legit? They had a really, really, really solid first couple of games. Let's look at who they played. But anyways, they had a pretty solid start to the season. So are the Cowboys legit? And then with that also, obviously, they have a really pretty, I'd say, severe injury, a season. Well, the question is it season changing? Some people would say a season changing injury, but we have their very well known, one of their marquee players, Diggs, on their defense, is out with a torn ACL during practice, not during a game, during practice, which is even worse than during a game, in my opinion. But The question is, are the Cowboys legit? And with Diggs going down, does that make them less legit, especially that defense? What are your Cowboy thoughts? Not that you're sitting there wanting to think about the Cowboys all day, but what are your thoughts when we are forced to talk about this?
Oh Lord, being forced my hand on this topic is tough. Um, but do I think the Cowboys are legit? It's a little too early for me. They've only played a couple of games. Um, but if they can go through, halfway through the season, they're putting up performances like this, I think it's time to basically say it's like, okay, the Cowboys are legit Super Bowl contenders this year. Now to the question of does the Diggs injury dismantle their defense? It obviously doesn't help, right? Losing a player of that caliber on that defense is obviously going to be an adjustment. Whoever you get in there to fill in that hole that Diggs left um, is not going to have the football IQ that Diggs has. They're going to have to learn. They're being forced their hand to go out there and learn themselves. So it doesn't help their defense. But do I think it hurts them to the point where they're going to lose a bunch of games because of it? No. They are very talented. They have a really talented front seven. Their defensive backs are really good. Their linebacking play is really good. Like, they're an overall very solid team, as much as I hate to say it. Congratulations, Cowboys fans. You might actually have a team here. But yeah, I do think they're legit, at least to start the year. Shutting out the Giants, I don't care if it was the Giants, yada yada yada. Getting a shutout in the NFL, period, is pretty hard to do because you're going up against other professional players. Now, are all professional players created equal? No. But they're still professionals at the end of the day, playing in the NFL, which is one of the toughest leagues. So at least to start the season, yeah, I think the Cowboys are legit. As far as the Diggs injury, I don't think it dismantles their offense or defense, excuse me. I think the Cowboys defense will still pick up where they left off. What are your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, yes, the Cowboys are legit at the moment, but the thing that is, I'm not going to say not unfortunate, but the thing that changes it a little bit is they're usually legit during this time of the year. They're usually 2-0 or at least 1-1. And the shutout was impressive. And honestly, even their win against the Jets was impressive because they showed that they could continue that momentum and they weren't going to go 1-1. So
Mm.
they look like a solid team, but they play the Cardinals next. And I'm sorry, but that's just going to be that's their game to lose. There's no way that Cardinals team is going to beat them unless the Cowboys beat themselves. And that's a terrible sign if they're beating themselves against the Cardinals. But I don't see that happening. So you play the Cardinals, that's a win. You play the Patriots, that's a win. I will say the 49ers, that's a little bit that is their first test. That is their first real test. Once we see that game, that's when we can say if they're legit or not. And that doesn't even mean if they win or lose. That just means if they compete, if their offense shows up. That is when I will be comfortable saying, okay, they're pretty legit. But are they legit at the moment? Yeah, they're legit. Getting a shutout in the NFL is impressive. And the way they got it, being a more defensive dominant performance, that is impressive in the NFL nowadays. To have a defense outshine your offense and you win, that is not super common. You can have your defense outshine your offense and you lose, but to have your defense outshine your offense and you get a shutout, good for that. I mean, that defense is legit. If there's one thing that's legit, it's that defense. If you need proof, look at fantasy football. Look at how many points they're scoring on fantasy football. You don't see any other defense scoring that many points. Now,
Right.
was Diggs a part of that? Of course. Of course Diggs was a part of that. But honestly, Diggs, other than being, yes, he is going to rack in a lot of interceptions, but he is not the greatest player at his position. He's not bad. He's a great player at his position, but you saw him get cooked a lot by receivers, and you saw receivers rack up. He might get a lot of receptions and interceptions, but you also see receivers that are matched up against him racking up a lot of yards per game. So I'm not saying he's overrated, but I'm not saying he is. You know who it would be devastating for that team if they lost? Micah Parsons, because that is the defender that is their difference maker. There's more defensive prowess and defensive strength in him, but he is a player that sets them apart. And Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in the league right now, and it's not even close. The best defensive player in the league plays for the Cowboys, and it's Micah Parsons. And so if that player was out, we could talk about, oh, this is devastating to the team, blah, blah, blah. But no, Diggs, it's not devastating. They still have great players in the backfield. They'll still compete. They'll still lock down teams. And at least in the meantime, I think they'll be 3 and probably 4-0 after their next 2 games. And could the Patriots beat them? Could they figure it out? Yes. But the Pats don't look good this year, and I think that's going to continue for them. So I think the Cowboys will be 4-0 going up against the 49ers, but then I do think we will see the 49ers step up, and it'll be a game. It'll be a game, and I'm excited for that one. But it'll be interesting to see as the season progresses, as the show progresses. Again, we'll try to avoid talking too many Cowboys and too much Cowboy talk, but we'll talk about them again. Hopefully next time it's, wow, the Cowboys haven't won a game since we last talked about them. But right now that's not the case. And again, I don't think we'll see that, because I do think they'll string together some wins and we'll see what they got. The Cowboys will always have a decent regular season. If there's one thing about the Cowboys, they will usually have a pretty good regular season. So I'm not really looking at them until the playoffs, because that's when they really show who they really are. So that's my take on the Cowboys. But moving right along, we'll get away from talking Cowboys finally, guys. I know
Thank
you're ready.
God.
I know, yeah, I know. I'm feeling the same way. Moving on to some college football, because honestly, NFL's great, but college football is where the hype is at right now, especially if you're Colorado, because right now you cannot get on social media without seeing Colorado. A speech, this, a that, a new quote from Dion. What did Dion have for breakfast? Who knows? Who knows what they're going to post next? But it's going to be Colorado. So we might as well talk about a little bit of Colorado, because that's what y'all are seeing all over the place. Our first college football topic is Colorado is entering conference play. I'm going to say finally, because now I think their actual tests are here, and we'll go into that. But how many wins do you think they will get in their next 6 games? And then also, there's no official timetable for how long Travis Hunter is going to be out, but how much will Travis Hunter's presence being gone affect them? How much is that presence a factor on that defense and that offense? Because that's a two-way guy. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about their next 6 games? And then Travis Hunter, what's that presence missing going to feel like for them?
It's going to be tough, man. So obviously they got number 10 Oregon this weekend. Oregon's looking really good. And then they have to turn around and play USC next week, which is very tough.
Back to back.
Back to back. That's going to really put the team to the test. They're 3-0 right now, but there's a good shot they're 3-2 coming out of that stretch. Because Oregon is a proven commodity at this point. USC is obviously a proven commodity at this point. They play Arizona State. They play Stanford. Then they turn around and play 2 more ranked games back to back against UCLA and Oregon State. And hell, I'm just going to rattle off the next 3 after that. They play Arizona, number 21 Washington State, which is looking pretty damn dangerous right now, and number 11 Utah. Let me see here. I'm going to count it up. There's potential for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 losses on their schedule to end the year. They could be 6-6, which would still be an improvement over last year, obviously, because they won 1 game. But do you think, say Colorado loses against Oregon, USC, UCLA, Oregon State, Washington State, and Utah, do you think that hype train's going to slow down any?
I mean, yeah, it has to. If they lose, here's what I'll say. If they compete against Oregon, if they compete against USC, even if they lose, the hype train is still there because they competed against those ranked top end teams. But if they go out of those games, if they lose those two, which I think they're losing Oregon and USC, I don't think that they're not winning out, and I don't think they're winning either. I don't think they're going 1-1. I think they're 0-2 in those, to be honest. Right after that, we have Arizona State and Stanford. Okay, those are your cushion games. Those are your bounce back games because Arizona State and Stanford are not fantastic teams. They're not bad, but they're not fantastic teams. Those are winnable games. But then you look at UCLA. UCLA is 22nd right now, ranked. Yeah, Colorado's 19th. UCLA, in my personal opinion, is a better football team, top to bottom. And UCLA is a team that very well by that point may have picked up more steam and be ranked higher than 22. So I think UCLA is going to be another loss on their schedule, if you ask me. And then Oregon State, right after UCLA. Here's the deal with Oregon State. Is Oregon State a powerhouse? Is Oregon State the best team in their conference? No, but they're 14th right now, and they're a pretty decent football team. And they always string together pretty, at least, mid of the pack teams. They never have like completely abysmal teams. They've had a couple of not great seasons, but they're usually middle of the pack. That isn't a guaranteed win. Arizona, I think you can win. But then we look at Washington State and Utah. Any of their ranked team that they're playing, I'm not going to say they can only beat unranked teams because they beat TCU. Obviously, TCU was ranked. That's the only team they've played so far that's been ranked. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, we're both Nebraska fans, but we can both admit Nebraska beat themselves. Now, Colorado could have not taken advantage of our mistakes, and they could have not scored and done. They did what they did, and it wasn't just because of our mistakes. They capitalized on our mistakes.
Well,
but Nebraska set the tone for their loss. They dug their grave.
Yeah. And I 100% agree because before all the turnovers, Nebraska was controlling the game.
Yeah, it was close.
Shedeur Sanders couldn't do anything against our defense. No, Nebraska was go on.
No, and then I was gonna say, and then again, Colorado State that continued. He couldn't do that much against their defense to start the game. So against better defenses, because TCU did not have a good defense that showed up in that first game. It's the first game of the season, whatever. When he played against more complete, solid defenses, Shedeur struggled. That offense struggled. That defense has struggled since week 1. The defense is not good. I'm sorry. That defense against a team like USC led by Caleb Williams, they're
going to get lit up.
They're going to get dismantled. Even if Oregon has a great offense, they've always had a good offense. Even if Oregon doesn't light them up, USC is absolutely going to light them up. There's no question about that.
I think there's potential for this Oregon team to light them up a little bit too.
And I'm with you. I definitely think there is. My only thinking is I do think between the two teams of USC and Oregon, I think the USC game is going to be more out of hand. I think Oregon's closer. I've got Oregon being closer. I think because USC is 4th right now, or excuse me, 5th right now. 5th. USC's 5th, and they're knocking on the playoff doors this year. And if they continue what they're going to continue, which I think they will, they're going to be a top-ranked team by the end of the season. So USC is the real deal. I think USC is laying it on pretty thick. Oregon is ranked 10th, and Oregon's a great team, but I still think that the Buffs will be able to at least be in the game for the first half of it. But I'm going to be honest with you right now, sitting here right now, my prediction it's hard to say for sure, but
I think they can go 2-6. 2 or 3-6.
You think that's really?
I think in their next 9 games, it's tough because you've got
It
all these
is.
ranked opponents. And yeah, you got some of the ranked opponents at home, but I get all these Colorado fans coming out here. So it's like, oh, we're gonna go undefeated. No,
Hell
there
no.
ain't there ain't
No.
no way. And I hate Colorado, but I'm just being a realist here. They are not going 12-0, especially losing Travis Hunter for the remainder of the year. He had a lacerated liver on that hit. Did you see that?
Is he out for the remainder of the year?
I think if he's not out for the remainder of the year, he's out for several weeks.
He's definitely out through the next 4, I think is what Dion said. He's out for the next 4 games. So that is a good chunk of, I mean, that is the next 2 marquee games he's out for. So he misses those marquee games. And by the time he comes back, I mean, that would be he'd be back for the UCLA game. That's not a game you want to come back for. That isn't, you don't really want that to be your first game back, I don't think. So, and I'm gonna be honest, Travis Hunter's great. And I think that he is going to be one of the first more full-time two-way NFL players. That might be a hot take, but I do think that he will be he will play both sides of the ball in the NFL, and it won't just be sometimes. I think they'll utilize him every game doing both sides of the ball, which that might be a hot take because even Deion Sanders did play both sides of the ball, but it wasn't like every game. It wasn't consistent in the NFL. But Hunter could be that dude, but
Yeah.
still him and Deion Sun on defense are the only 2 marquee defensive players on that team. The rest of that defense is not incredibly that talented in a sense of competing against USC and Oregon. Are they they're not that talented. I would never be
Well,
able to do what half of those guys are like, athletic monsters, but still compared to who they're playing against, especially with USC and Oregon, they are not that talented of a defense that's
I
going to be able
would
to keep up.
I would even go as far as playing UCLA and Oregon State too.
Yeah.
Oregon State has a really good offense.
Utah,
UCLA has a really good offense.
even an 11th ranked Utah.
Yeah, it's going to be tough road sledding in these 9 games, I think. I think there's potential there where they could go 3-6. And the question is, with all the hype early on in the season, and say they get blown out in some of these ranked losses because their defense is terrible, do you think Colorado fans will start turning on Dion toward the end of the year? Because we all know how toxic the Colorado fan base is. Do you think after this early season success, do you think that the entire Colorado fan base is still going to be on the Dion hype train?
I think so because I'm going to be honest. I do really like Dion as a coach, and I do really like his methods and what he's doing. Like, is it a little bit annoying to see every single move that team is doing every single day on social media? Yes, but there's a reason that they're like that and that they have that hype, and it's not really because of the team. It's because of Dion and because of who he is and how polarizing he is as a person, as a figure. So I guess it's you're not going to lose that hype because if anything, if they end up going 6-6, that's going to fuel that team and fuel him for next season. And I think they'd at least win 8 to 10 games the next season. So I do think that the Dion hype train will continue and that it will actually maybe be more deserving of all the hype in the coming year. But people saying they're going to be undefeated, all these things, I mean, that is just ridiculous. That's not realistic. Let's be honest. They're not going undefeated and playing teams like USC and playing teams like Oregon and even Oregon State, even Utah. They're not going to win out all those games because we saw them almost get beat by Colorado State. And all the respect to Colorado State, all the respect, that was a good game. It's not like I'm getting Colorado State fought, and Colorado State might be a team to watch in the next.
They were a 3-touchdown underdog.
Yeah, they were leading by commanding amount until honestly the last 5 minutes, and then they kind of unravel, but even a little bit before that in the fourth quarter. But the whole point is Colorado's great. Colorado deserves some of the hype, but the hype train has kind of left the station and
Gone out of control.
Yeah, it's going a little too fast right now. It made sense after TCU. I didn't really get why it ramped up after the Nebraska win, especially with how the win looked on our end, for like who they played and how we performed with turnovers and everything. But again, they capitalized. They could have very easily not capitalized and then not win the game or win by less. But still, then they had Colorado State. I get that was the reason there was hype was the rivalry and all that and this and that. But Colorado State being a 3-touchdown underdog and then just barely coming up short, that doesn't look great going into Oregon and USC. I'm sorry. For me, people were like, did you see what Coach Prime and those boys did? I'm like, yeah, they barely beat Colorado State. I did see what Coach Prime and those boys did. They beat Nebraska when we turned the ball over and beat ourselves. I'm not making excuses. I don't want to come off like that because I do think
It's not wrong though.
But it's not wrong. The only game I will give them is TCU, which is another game where they played a team that didn't show up defensively. But still, if there's one game I will give them out of their 3 games when I'm like, I respect them for that, it's got to be TCU. It's got to be that. It's got that one. Their one ranked team they played. That one I'll give them. The other games, they haven't been underdogs in the other games. They haven't been underdogs. They weren't underdogs against Nebraska or Colorado State. So again, I don't hate them. We're going to talk one more talk about them, but one specific player in general, but we will talk about them more throughout the season, and we'll touch back in on Colorado. And you don't have to look too far to see them. Just open up Instagram, and if you have any sport apps, you'll see Colorado at some point during the day, probably 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times. So you don't have to go too far to find them. But our last Colorado CU topic, because we got a lot more to talk football, especially Husker football, because again, if you're from Nebraska, you don't want to hear too much more about Colorado. But one more topic is a little Heisman talk, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this because Caleb Williams, defending Heisman from USC, versus CU Shedeur Sanders. Who is the better quarterback between Shedeur and Caleb? And is he a legitimate Heisman contender this year? Is Shedeur Sanders a legitimate Heisman contender? If you think he's better than Caleb Williams, which I kind of think I already know your thoughts, but if you think he is better than Caleb Williams, then that's the answer. But what are your thoughts, man? Is he legit? Who's better?
I'm going to go with the who's better first. Even though Sanders at this point in the year has more passing yards, I still think Caleb Williams is definitely your Heisman frontrunner going into this week. He is 55 of 70, which is almost an 80% completion percentage for 878 yards, averaging almost 293 yards a game, 12 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 240 rating. You go to Shedeur Sanders. He has 1,251 yards passing, averaging 417 a game, 10 touchdowns, with a rating of 178. And he has the 1 interception against Colorado State. If Shedeur Sanders can go out and average 400 yards a game passing the ball the remainder of the year, which I doubt is going to happen, I would put Shedeur Sanders up there. But let's look at the teams that he played. He played TCU, who has a terrible defense. Terrible. They're probably going to be in the hundreds for total defense at the end of the year. Then they played Nebraska, which they wore Nebraska's defense out. Nebraska turned the ball over 4 or 5 times that game. And they just beat themselves. up until the point where they're turning the ball over, Nebraska was controlling that game, and Shedeur Sanders wouldn't have had the stats that he did. He went 31 of 42 for 393 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Running the ball, he was not a threat, obviously. He hasn't been a threat in any of these games. He had 11 attempts for negative 30 yards, averaged negative 3 yards a carry, because Nebraska sacked him 7 times. 7 times. And like, the only reason why Colorado won by the margin they did is Nebraska beat themselves. Then they played Colorado State, and Colorado State led a good chunk of that game. Shedeur Sanders was good throughout a lot of the game. 38 of 47, 348, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. So at this point, even though Sanders has more yards, I think Caleb Williams is still your front runner between the two teams. And I think we're going to see Caleb Williams show out against Arizona State this week. I think he's going to boost up his stats a little bit more, because I don't think Arizona State's that good. They're definitely not good enough to compete up with the number 5 USC team. So yeah, I'm curious as to what you think. Who do you think is better between Sanders and Williams?
Well, Williams is more proven. He's already a Heisman. Now, you don't see a back-to-back Heisman. It's not super common, but I can see that with Caleb Williams for sure. The fact that he came back and didn't go to the league and is doing what he's doing, he's on a mission. They're on a mission for him to win back-to-back Heisman and for him to win a championship with USC. It's exactly like NCAA 14 when the players ask to leave and you have to ask them to stay. You got to give them the incentives. It's a Heisman and it's a championship. That is why he stayed. He's staying to complete those accolades, to be one of those players that sets himself apart. So honestly, Caleb Williams is more proven. Shedeur Sanders has balled out, and I think that he is a legitimate contender, and he is a top 10 quarterback in the league. I mean, he is a top 5 quarterback rankings. He's a top 3 quarterback statistically. So Shedeur is fantastic. He's a great quarterback who went from Jackson State to CU with a he transferred, and it's been really smooth. That's been a really good transfer for him. He's really shown that he can ball out against NCAA Division I teams. He's proven that. That's amazing. And he's going to continue that. I can see him continuing to ball out, even if they lose against Oregon and USC. I can see him doing his best to still ball out and keep them in the game. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman this year. I do think that Shedeur is going to stick around another year, and I do think he could win next season, but I don't think he's going to win it this year. I'm not super set on it being Caleb Williams, but I do think that if it's not Shedeur, it probably will be Caleb, because between the two of them, they're probably the top 2 front runners at the moment in most people's lists and most people's eyes. But if the Buffs really start to struggle, that could change, because we've already seen Shedeur struggle a little bit as the season's progressed. We've seen a little more struggle out of Shedeur. First game, he looked the best. Second game, we saw those sacks. We saw that line break. We saw him fold a little bit more. And then against Colorado State, yeah, they won. Yeah, he went on that 98-yard, all that stuff, that drive, everything. But before that drive, he was not performing fantastically. He was not having his best game. So I do think that as the season has progressed, we've seen teams start to figure out his tendencies, figure out how to get to him and shut him down. So if that happens, I think he'll really start to fall down in the standings, but we really don't know. It's going to be hard to say until we start to see these games happen and until we see him up against an Oregon or a USC, because we haven't seen him up against a caliber of defense that USC and Oregon have, or play in a stadium like USC, like Oregon, because USC is USC a home game for the Buffs? It is, correct?
Yes.
But Oregon is away. So we haven't seen them go to those stadiums and play. So it's going to be interesting, man. I'm not a CU hater, but I'm not a CU believer. And I do really like Shadour's game, and I think that he's going to be a great quarterback in the league. But I do think that Caleb Williams is the best one out of them, because I just think that between the two, he again is more proven, and for me that just means a lot. Being proven, especially in the Division I college football world that gets more and more competitive every season, being proven is a big thing. So I got to give it to Caleb Williams, but Shadour's right up there. So looking at our last college football topic that is not Husker related, because we're moving on to some Husker sport talk next. Our last topic is obviously Alabama losing to Texas and not looking fantastic in their follow-up game, even though, yes, they did win and pull that game off and whatever you want to say. They did not look fantastic, at least in a lot of people's opinions. The Alabama that you either love or you hate has not really looked like it's been there. Looking at Alabama's next game, they play number 15 Mississippi, and then unranked Mississippi State, and then Texas A&M, and then Arkansas. So they have a couple of unranked matchups in a row, but they have not looked fantastic so far. In your opinion, is the Nick Saban Alabama dominance era almost done, or is it done? Or do they have at least one more championship with him at the helm? What are your thoughts? Because Alabama is they're an underwhelming team so far this season, at least in my opinion. What are your thoughts? Is that going to be the trend, or do they still have a chance to make it back to what they were?
This year, it's going to be tough for them to get back to where they want to be. Obviously, they fell outside of the top 10 for the first time in over a decade. They're sitting at number 13, and they got a tough game against Ole Miss tomorrow. And if I tell you what, if that offense plays as bad as they did against South Florida, Ole Miss is going to win tomorrow. The game's in Tuscaloosa at 2:30. And then you can say the same about a lot of their other games too. As far as, do I think the Nick Saban era of dominance is over? I don't know if it's completely over. I think they very well could get back to the team that they want to be next year. But I think it's on its way to being done. I think the Nick Saban tenure, he's going to be out of there pretty soon. He's getting to that age where he may start thinking about retiring. I know he said that he doesn't plan on retiring anytime soon, but it's hard to believe, that he's not even thinking about it a little bit just to stay at home. Like, he's made enough money. He can afford to live the rest of his life right now. But yeah, I think he's still got, maybe 3 or 4 more seasons left as a coach. And maybe one championship. But I think there's other teams now that are starting to catch up, like a Texas that we saw last week. Beat Alabama by 10 points, which I'm going to kind of go off of the trail a little bit here. With Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC next year, I think that shows what Texas could do against a, higher caliber SEC school. Because Texas looked really good, much to any of our dismay. They looked really good. And I think they're going to be very, very competitive in the SEC. Considering that we just saw Tennessee face plant against an unranked Florida school. You've got Arkansas, which is not where they used to be. LSU is good, but we'll see toward the end of the year. You've got Auburn, that's incredibly overwhelming. Kentucky, that hasn't been good since Will Levis left. So the SEC isn't what it used to be. It's not as high a caliber as they have been in years past, where they're in competition to get 2-3 schools into the college football playoff. So, yeah, I don't know if the Alabama reign is completely done, but I think it's well on its way. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm gonna be honest. I do think that there is a chance that they could compete with Saban, but I have a feeling that he's gonna be out the door before they really get back to being a championship team. I think that they're gonna finish ranked in the top 20 this year. Is it solid set in stone? No, but I think it's pretty safe to assume even if they start to fall off a little bit, they can probably still finish in the top 20. I'm not going to say with ease, but they can definitely get it done and still probably finish within the top 15, top 10. But what I will say is it's not guaranteed. They have to show up against these teams they're playing. And after their next few games against unranked opponents, they do have some ranked teams and some ranked games and a harder path after that. So they have to be ready to go. And sometimes when you play those unranked teams, you get lax and you stop. You get very lax and you don't get super focused for those ranked matchups. And you see Tennessee and then LSU. Those are two back-to-back ranked games, and they could easily lose both of those. So Alabama is not the team that they were even just 2-3 years ago. Could they get back to it? Absolutely. Will it be with Nick Saban? I don't think so. I think he's either going to go to the broadcast booth or potentially go back to the NFL. He's made it clear that he doesn't really want to go back to the NFL. Most college coaches, that transition is not super successful, but he would be the guy that I can see making it work. So maybe we see him transfer and translate his talents to the NFL and go up to a team, because there will be teams that will need coaches after this season. So we'll see what happens. I do think Nick Saban is on the way out, but I don't think he's going to be forced out, and I don't think that they're going to be some 6-7 win team. I still think they're going to be an Alabama 10+ win season team with him under helm, and maybe he sticks around longer and tries to get it done. But I do think that he's on the way out, and I do think that the era is also on the way out. But who knows, man? We could see him stick around and then win a couple more. I definitely think if he did stick around, they'd only win one more, but who knows, bro? I mean, it's Alabama. They're annoyingly successful. They're a team that has been on top for a long time, but I don't think that that's the case anymore. And who knows? Maybe they'll start to get on the downward spiral. We'll see. I know some fans would be really happy about that. So, I'm a little indifferent, but I will say I like seeing different teams in the national championship. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I do too.
That's my one thing about Alabama. But if there's one thing that I'm like not celebrating them starting to be on the downward, but whatever, it's like, yeah, it's cool to see other teams get representation in the championship.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree, and we already seen it with the fall off of Clemson. Clemson fell off really quick. Started in the top 10, and they're nowhere to be seen in the top 25. So
it's changing.
Yeah, the way college football is evolving right now and catching up to some of these schools, it's kind of crazy. And now you've got teams like Florida State and Texas sneaking up on people. Obviously, you got your mainstays in Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, up there. But yeah, the teams that were reigning in college football for the last decade, like a Clemson, Alabama, because it seemed like for a while there, Clemson and Alabama were the top two schools in college football. And there's a reason why they're playing in all those national championship games. So yeah, it's fun to watch the sport evolve in a way to where it's not a guarantee if you get into the national championship anymore. It's huge. And I think it's going to improve viewership because not one singular team is guaranteed a spot in the national championship now, as it was in years past. So, very interesting. Let's transition over to some Husker football talk. They play Louisiana Tech tomorrow. They looked really good up against Northern Illinois last week. Their defense was suffocating. The offense did what they needed to do. Yeah, they had that one fumble, but I don't blame it on the quarterback one bit. It was a missed block assignment, but they only gave up 3 points and they coughed the ball up inside their own 3-yard line. So the Nebraska defense is looking really good. The offense is starting to come around a little bit as of last week. With La Tech coming in, it's going to be tough for La Tech to do anything on offense. They're going to have to rely on their defense to slow down Nebraska's running attack with their quarterback and running back. And they're going to have to slow down Nebraska wide receivers too. Louisiana Tech is a lot like Northern Illinois. They are a physical football team, and they will try to impose their will. But they didn't do a great job last week against Nebraska. I think Nebraska will take care of business tomorrow. I think the score is going to be a lot of the same as it was last week. My scoring prediction is I think Nebraska will score 7 touchdowns. They'll score 42 points. And I think they'll give up 3 points because they allow, other players to play in the second half. And I think they give up a field goal somewhere down the line. I do think this defense is as good as advertised. I think they'll continue doing that if the offense doesn't continue putting the defense in bad situations. But I don't think they will. I think this is another get-right game before they go into the gauntlet of conference play, which starts up against Michigan next week. And I think even with, and we'll talk about Sims here in the next segment of this Husker side of things. But I think even with Sims' turnover proneness in his first 2 games, I think he still gives us a shot to win, as well as Harburg. I think both quarterbacks will, because Sims is obviously a really good athlete. You got Harburg, who's another really good athlete. It'll be interesting to see who starts. But what are your feelings and thoughts going into Louisiana Tech? Do you think Nebraska is going to take care of business much like they did last week?
I'm saying the same exact thing I said for the last game against Northern Illinois, and that's if it is less than a 2-score game, then I'm not watching the rest of the season, because this is a team that we should just dominate. It's not going to be a 2-score game or less. My prediction is 42-10. I do think that, LA Tech, they're a decent team. They're a decent program. They're in the mix. They're in the mix in some games. They've been in the mix the last couple of years in some games. So I do think that they will be ready to go. They'll show up. First couple of drives, they'll show up, they'll show out. That's going to break down against, first of all, the Huskers, because our defense is a solid defense. We are one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. Whether or not people want to admit that or not, we really are. And our offense isn't bad either. It's just there's a lot of proving our offense still has to do, even just yet this year, not proving going forward, just even this season, game by game. So there's a lot that our offense has yet to prove. But last game, such a big difference than the first 2. Such a big difference. You can argue that it's because of who was playing quarterback for the game. You can argue that it was our first home game. You can argue that it's who we played. You can argue a lot of things. What you can't argue is that the Huskers looked way better. There's no argument there. They looked way better last game. I give them 1 more touchdown than they had last game, and I give the other team 1 less point. So I have it being 42-10. And then I have us taking it in, and we'll go right into this. They play Michigan as their first. Yes, they played Minnesota at the beginning of the season, but obviously that was a different kind of a weird, different type of thing. So their first real scheduled conference game is against Michigan. Number 2, I will add number 2, Michigan. They are currently ranked number 2. Who knows if they still will be, but I have a good feeling they will still be ranked if where they are. So when we go up against Michigan, obviously, here's the thing. First of all, location is huge. It's at Nebraska. That, I'm sorry, I know that it doesn't make a big difference all like completely because we've had Memorial Stadium forever, and since we've gotten pretty mediocre, and it hasn't helped us win football games, but environment is huge. And the fact that it is in Nebraska, if we are 2-0 in Memorial Stadium, that's going to be felt at that
Oh,
Michigan.
yeah.
That is going to be felt at that Michigan game. I wish I could fly to Nebraska and be there for that game because that is going to be, I'm not saying we're going to win that game because it's in Nebraska, but I think that and a
The
combination,
energy.
the energy and the confidence we'll be feeling in that stadium after going 2-0 in it, I think we're gonna show up. So I think that Michigan-Nebraska game is going to be a 1-score game. I think it's gonna be a punch back and forth. I do think it's gonna be a 1-score game. I think that it's going to be I give it honestly, I give it 35-28. Nebraska comes out on top. Could we be ahead by a little bit more? Could we get beaten by way more? Of course, but I have it being 35-28. We come out on top and then continue that. But what are your thoughts looking at that Michigan game? What do you have it being?
I think if Nebraska goes out and takes care of business this week and they continue building on their performance last week, I think that Nebraska-Michigan game gets more interesting. I think you're going to get more people to talk about it. Because obviously the first 2 games of the year, Nebraska turned over the ball 8 times. And you can't do that to win football games. Well, we saw them limit that last week. And if they continue that trend and the offense can improve on the running attack, and if they can get some of the wide receivers going, as well as the defense to go, I think it could be a sleeper game for Michigan potentially, because it's going to be in Memorial Stadium. You're going to have 90,000 fans in that stadium. It's going to be rocking, especially if Nebraska gets off to a really good start. Michigan does not look as flashy on offense. Their running backs are struggling. Because going into the season, all I heard was the Donovan Edwards hype. Donovan Edwards and then whoever their other running back is. And I think both running backs have yet to eclipse 100 yards of running offense. So they haven't looked great. Their quarterback, he's looked serviceable, but hasn't looked exactly flashy like everybody thought. And the offense has struggled in first halves. They were only up by 8 points against Bowling Green last week, 14-6 at half. Albeit a lot of top teams struggled in the first half last week, let's be real. But again, it's been all season for Michigan. They've been more of a second half team. But if Nebraska can limit Michigan's possessions in the first half, can put up a couple 3 scores in the first half, capitalize on all their opportunities, and maybe even force Michigan into a couple of mistakes, I think Nebraska's got a shot. They are the 4th most talented team in the Big Ten right now, as far as 4 stars and 5 stars or whatever on their team. They are ranked 4th. So Nebraska has a lot of talent. They got to go out and prove it now. And I think this Michigan game is going to be that first real test to, like, if Nebraska comes out on top against Michigan, I think Nebraska could win out the rest of the year. Like, I don't think I am like crazy saying that, because Michigan's obviously their toughest game of the year going through the rest of the schedule. They play what may be a ranked Iowa team at the end of the year, but outside of that, they don't have any more ranked teams on the schedule outside of Michigan. So, yeah, that game is going to be interesting. Like, you're going to, like, you know how the hype train is for Colorado right now? If Nebraska beats Michigan next week, that Nebraska hype train's going to start going off the rails. It's going to be, it may be on Colorado's level. I'm just going to be real because they're going to be on a 3-game winning streak going into their next game, I think, against Illinois. So, and that'll put them at, let's see, 4-2, 3-2, 4-2, something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's possible. I mean, it's not out of touch to say that. It's not like it's out of reach to think that we could be in the mix for the Big Ten, or at least be one of the teams that finishes top half of our conference. What I will say is the Michigan game is gonna have to set the tone. If we lose to Michigan, I think our only real shot at being that team that could be one of the best in the Big Ten is if we beat Michigan and then continue that. If we lose to Michigan, we're still going to string together some wins against our opponents. We're not going to lose to a team like Northwestern this year. I really don't think. We're not going to lose to a team. I don't think we're going to lose to a team like Illinois. Nothing wrong with Illinois or Purdue. Like these, there's a lot of teams, Maryland. There's a lot of teams where they're not gimme games, but the Huskers have no right losing those games. Michigan is our real challenge. Michigan is our real test. That's why this LA Tech game needs to go so well, so that we're clicking on all cylinders when we play Michigan, because that Michigan game is our real test. But if we beat Michigan, who knows? I'm not going to say we win the rest of our games after Michigan, but if we beat Michigan, there's a great chance we do. There's a great chance we win out the rest of the season if we beat Michigan. So,
Which would be incredible after getting off to 0-2 start.
That would be, yeah, that would be ridiculous to be, that would be incredible. That really would be the start that everyone was hoping we would have. And again, there's a lot of doubt. I get it. I understand it. But first 2 games of the season, I think it doesn't define who we are. And this LA Tech game,
it's how you finish.
It's how you finish. Exactly. This Tech game is going to boost us. And I think we're going to start real conference play against Michigan, and we're going to show up. So I'm excited. I'm hyped. We'll continue with that. But one more topic to talk about with Husker football, talking about that quarterback situation. We've already kind of alluded to the fact that there's been a switch. The last game, Sims did not start. It was a different quarterback that was starting, one that garnered a lot of doubt from a lot of people online about, could a quarterback from Kearney show up, Kearney, Nebraska? Some of our viewers might not even know where that is, but a lot probably do. But Kearney, Nebraska, could a quarterback from there really come out and win, even against a team like Northern Illinois? But came out, showed up. But the question is, should they give Sims another chance, or should they stick with the quarterback that won them their first game of the season? What are your thoughts going forward?
This may sound like a hot take, but I do think they need to give Sims another chance. I do think he is the better athlete of the two. He is a faster runner. He just needs to be smarter with the ball and catch his damn snaps from the center. It's what he needs to do. If he plays a clean game, this offense has a really good chance to being a pretty prolific running attack. And I do think it'll open things up in the passing game too. So take away his turnovers and everything. He's done some really good things on this offense. So I think this week we will see Sims start. I do think there will be packages where Heinrich Harburg is in there this weekend as well. So yeah, I'm just hoping, I'll be at the game tomorrow. I'm hoping if Sims is announced, hopefully there's nobody booing Matt Rule or this team, because Sims needs this fan base's support. He needs it more than ever. So, yeah, he deserves another chance. And I do think this would be a perfect game to give him that chance. What are your thoughts? Do you think he deserves another chance? Like, do you align with me, or do you think he needs to be benched?
I think he deserves another chance. I don't think he's gotten a fair enough shot yet. That's not me saying like, oh, he hasn't gotten, because yeah, he did have some pretty negative plays and turnovers in those first two games, but I don't think it's a good enough viewpoint of how he's going to perform throughout the rest of the season. And I do think that it could be a really positive thing for him to start against Tech. I think that's the only way that they can really gauge this, is if they give him one more chance to start and to really gauge it and see how it is. So and again, I like his skill set. I think he's a really talented player. We have him for a reason. He came here for a reason. So I'm really excited, and I think I'm with you, but I'm not going to be in the stadium. But I do hope that there is no booing, because that just isn't going to help us. That never has. That usually doesn't help any team. But with the Huskers, that support and that outpouring love, that's what that team needs, and that's what they've always needed, no matter how good or bad they've been. So my hope is that he gets the love he deserves, but I also hope he performs the way he needs to. But I think that they would be, I'm not going to say they'd be stupid not to give him one more chance before Michigan, but it wouldn't be wise. I think that Rule is too smart of a coach, and that staff is too talented not to understand before going into the thick of conference play. It would be unwise not to give Sims another chance, especially at home against LA. That's the perfect game. That's his perfect homecoming as a Husker. So I hope that's what that turns into. But again, we've got a really solid player. If not, it's just I'm still on the Sims train, if I'm being honest, and it sounds like you share that as well.
Yeah, I'm still on the Sims train. I do think he will get right. I don't think he's going to average 4 turnovers a game like he did the first 2 games. So, yeah, he just needs to work on his fundamentals a little bit more. He's a really good athlete, as we saw him using his legs. So yeah, I'm 100%, in support of Sims starting the game tomorrow. And we'll know 2 hours before the game starts if he's going to be the definitive quarterback one, or if it's going to be Harburg. I think either one of those guys gives us a shot to win. So it'll be interesting. I'll be in the stadium, so I'll have some takes from the game next episode. Let's transition over to a little bit of Husker basketball. The schedule was released. The big question here, Nebraska basketball finished right at 500 last year. They were 16-16. They looked improved. They were the 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament last year, which was a big improvement over years past where they weren't even in the Big Ten tournament. Or if they were a definitive bottom seed. Will they make that take that next step this season? Or if they don't, will the seat get hot for the coach? I do think they will make that next step. We look at their schedule and who they start off with. November 6th, they play Lindenwood. That should be a win at home. They play Florida A&M the next game 3 days after. That should be another win at home. They play Rider. Another win at home. They play Stony Brook, which is a slightly tougher game because Stony Brook has had some pretty good basketball teams. Should be another win at home. They should start off the season with 6 straight wins going up against Creighton December 3rd. That's if they do what they need to do, which they should. They need to play smart basketball and just read their keys right. Take good shots. And the rest of their schedule looks pretty decent too. Like they play the likes of Wisconsin, which is always a pretty tough basketball stool. They play Michigan State. We already know who Michigan State is. They're consistently in the conversation for March Madness, national championship talk. Maryland is another really good school. Ohio State's starting to come up. Michigan. But some of those games are at home. I do think Nebraska is going to improve off of their 500 record. In fact, I think Nebraska wins 22 games this year. That is my prediction. Nebraska wins 22 games, and they are a team that is going to be in the top half of the Big Ten. They will make it to March, and I think it'll cool off Hoiberg's seat a little bit. What are your thoughts on this Nebraska basketball team? Because I do think they have the potential to be very fun to watch.
I think that they've already started that transition with how they played last season, and it was a big difference from the season before. So there's no telling what they can build off from that. I think they will build off. I do have them winning 20 plus. I do have them being a team that we see in the mix for the Big Ten. And I do have them honestly becoming the team that we hired Hoiberg to build. I think that we got him for a reason, and I've been frustrated with him, as many fans have been. But I think that if you trust the process, if you trust what he's been building, then this would make sense. This would be something that was expected if you've been trusting that, if you've been trusting that building process. We've picked up some bigger name recruits. We've built the players we've had. We've kept some of the players that could have left. We've really became an actual team, and I believe that this is the first time in years Nebraska basketball has had a fully functional, fully able, ready to compete program, and we have that, and I think it's going to be exciting. I have them winning 20 plus. I have them maybe even making it to March, maybe even making a push. Who knows? I mean, you never know. Programs can turn themselves around so fast,
Yeah.
and I think that Nebraska basketball is going to be one of those programs. So I'm excited, man. I'm the season can't come soon enough. I think the beginning of the season is in our favor, and it usually is. Those smaller, name teams we're playing, that's going to really give us that boost. That's going to really give us that confidence. So when we play those big name teams, we're ready to go. So I think we're going to dominate the start of our season and continue that going forward. And I really think that we have a shot to be one of those top teams in the Big Ten this season.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And like you said, Hoiberg has added a lot of good pieces to this team. He's recruited some high school players, but yeah, he's added some talent through the transfer portal as well to try and turn this thing around. Because obviously his first few seasons have not gone to plan. So yeah, last year was kind of a breath of fresh air. They were in the conversation for an NIT bid, didn't quite get it. But yeah, I think they're going to make that jump. I think they win 5-6 more games this year than they did last year, and I think we will find them in March, perhaps a little bit of a higher seed too. It just all depends on how this team gels and plays together. I think it's all going to start really like after their first 6, which they should win. They'll be favored in all of them. They play Creighton at home, which I actually might go to that game.
You should that
because the last time Nebraska played Creighton, obviously Nebraska beat them. So I do think that game is going to be highly contested. It's going to be on national TV, especially if Nebraska is going in at 6-0. And then they turn around and play Minnesota. Minnesota is a team that Nebraska has struggled to beat the last couple of years. And Minnesota has not been a particularly good basketball team the last couple. They haven't made it to March, I think, in 3 or 4 years. So yeah, Minnesota was a 14 seed in the Big Ten tournament last year. Nebraska was the 11, and Nebraska lost by 3 points in the opening round of the Big Ten tournament. You can't do that if you want the success that you want to have. So if they start 6-0 and they can beat Creighton to go 7-0, I think the hype train for Hoiberg is going to go up because they've got a lot of winnable schedules, and like beating a team like Creighton, who has made it to a couple of Elite Eights the last couple of years, You beat Creighton, you can compete with anybody in your conference. And I don't think that's that hard of a take because Creighton's a really good basketball program right now. And I do think Creighton has the potential to finally surpass that Elite Eight status. I think they can maybe get to the Final Four.
Oh, yeah.
They've been so close. So it'll be interesting, man. I'm excited. I haven't been this excited for Nebraska basketball in several years, probably since Tim Miles. So, and we all know Tim Miles had some pretty decent basketball teams when he was the coach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So all of that'll be interesting. Obviously, as we get closer to Nebraska basketball season, we'll talk more of Husker hoops. I kind of want to transition over to some Husker volleyball now before we transition over to our NBA segment. Nebraska volleyball right now, they have no upperclassmen. They have nobody who's going to graduate this year. They have won 8 or 9 straight games. They just beat number 21 Kentucky in 4 sets. They've been dominating these games. My question to you is, do you think this Nebraska volleyball team has what it takes to potentially win a national championship this year? Or do you think this team, considering they have no seniors, is still one year away from really competing for a national championship?
So it's interesting that you ask that. If anything, I think the fact that we don't have those seniors, the fact that we are a young team, I think that is our advantage. I think that, yes, senior leadership is huge in college sports, but I think we have an edge. I really do. I think we have an edge. We have a young, hungry team that is built to last. And so I think, if anything, not having that senior leadership, having that different approach is a benefit to us. I think we have a squad. Nebraska volleyball is the best Husker sport of the last 20 years. Like it or not, not everyone.
It's true.
Major football fans, I know some fans that might take offense to that are just diehard football fans. But no, if we're talking about success, it is the volleyball team. They are the most successful program at UNL in the last 20 years. Consistent success. It's Nebraska volleyball. I think this is their year. I think that they are going to be a team that remains in the top 10 as long as that coach is coaching for that team, and as long as they can pull in some of the best recruits, because Nebraska volleyball has a really good hand in the recruiting field for college sports, especially specifically, obviously, for their sport of volleyball. We don't have the greatest recruiting outside of that. We have pretty good football recruiting that's getting better, and other sports good recruiting. Volleyball, though, is a step above, just like their team is a step above. So I think this is their year. And again, like I said, I think not having a senior, again, having that leadership is an advantage. And it's not like a disadvantage having that, obviously. But I do think that they have that. I think they have an advantage with that team they have. The makeup, the team they have this season is their advantage and is the reason I think they're going to win.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Considering they have no seniors, they're young and hungry, man. And you've seen that in the last 9 games they've played. They're undefeated. And now they have a tough game up against number 12 Minnesota to open up Big Ten play. And it's at home. It's at the Devaney Center. And if I had nothing else going on Sunday night, I would probably be in Lincoln right now going to Nebraska, Minnesota volleyball. I have yet to make it to the Devaney Center. So, yeah, if they continue on this, trajectory that they are, it's going to be hard saying that Nebraska won't be in the national championship at the end of the year. It's going to be them or Wisconsin. Wisconsin's obviously a very solid volleyball school right now. They're ranked number 1 in the country. But Nebraska is not that far behind. They're number 2. So all they have to do is just keep doing what they've been doing, because they've been winning these games in 3-4 sets. Some of them have been like complete sweeps. I think they complete swept their first 3 teams that they played. So it's exciting, man. I do think athletics at Nebraska as a whole is coming up. I do think as we get into baseball and softball season, I think this baseball team for Nebraska is going to be really good. I think with Jordy Ball with the softball team, picking up Jordy Ball in the transfer portal, having her transfer back here, she was one of the, if not the best pitchers in women's softball for Oklahoma. She won over 20 games pitching, and she had less than a 1 ERA. I do think having her pitching and then I think having her bat in that offense, this women's softball team is about to take off.
Oh yeah, they're gonna be the Big Ten champions.
Yeah, I'm my bias aside, I completely agree. I think Nebraska softball is gonna go through the Big Ten gauntlet and come out on top. I do think baseball too.
Yeah.
Baseball too, they hold the number 1 transfer class in the country right now because they picked up a lot of people from the transfer portal. I think this baseball team is going to be really good too. I think we're going to see a remarkable improvement over last year. And I think Nebraska baseball has the chance to win another Big Ten championship, something that they haven't done in like 3 years.
I think it's possible. I think, like you said, Nebraska sports are on the rise, and I'm here for it, man. Honestly, I especially, again, we talk about more than just that college sport-wise on this show, but it is nice to be able to talk about positives. Season 1 of the Connor and Heffernan show, we didn't have all the positives to talk about with Husker Sports. So I think this is the most positives we have at one time to talk about. So I'll take it. I'll take it for sure. It's a good thing. It's a great thing.
Yep, absolutely, man. Obviously, we'll talk more about Husker Sports as obviously the volleyball, basketball, and football season get further underway. And then we'll talk baseball and softball come spring. A lot of interesting talking points, but yeah, man, why don't you transition us over to their NBA segment because this is your thing.
Absolutely, man. So yeah, NBA, we're gonna get into it a little bit because season's coming up. I think we're like 33 or 32 days away from the official tip-off, something like that. I have the countdown on my phone, but I don't remember what it is. But either talk about him. He is going into 20 plus years in the NBA, and he is coming off of a Western Conference Finals appearance, breaking this all-time scoring record, and helping lead the Lakers back from where they were just a season before that. So LeBron James, all-time great, playing great. The season rankings of players, the preseason, I will say, rankings came out, and LeBron James is out of the top 10 for one of the first times, if not maybe the first time since his rookie year or second year. He's been in the top 10 consistently. My question to you is 12. I mean, come on, bro. There's no other player playing 20 plus years in the NBA that's going to be in the top 20. So that is impressive in and of itself. But is LeBron James ranked correctly at 12, or should he be higher or lower? What are your thoughts?
It's tough, man. If he stays healthy, he's easily well within the top 10 of all NBA players. He's still that guy. The question is he going to stay healthy for the rest of the season? Or if the team's not doing well, is he going to take, the last quarter of the season off? It remains to be seen, but I do think this Lakers team is going to be really good. I have them potentially winning the West this year. So I think right now, having him at 12, or CBS Sports has him at 11 right now. I think that is a fair ranking for him. And like you said, there's nobody who has played the game for more than 20 years has been in the top 20 in, each of the player rankings of the last 20 years. So I think it's still fitting for him. I think he will be a top 5 player toward the end of the year. I think he'll put up those stats. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you think he's fairly ranked?
I guess for me, I do think he's at the right place. I don't think he is a top 10 player anymore, but I do think he is still a top 20 and a top 15. And he's going to remain in the top 20 until he retires, because, in my personal opinion, that's not going to be very long. I don't think we're going to see LeBron James play more than 3 seasons at the most. I think that we are in the last back half of LeBron's career. And so I think he'll stay in this realm until he's done, but I don't think he'll break the top 10 again. I think he'll stay right around the top 15 from 11 to 15. I think that's where he'll be, and I think that's fine. He was NBA all third team. I think he should have been second team. The only reason he wasn't was those stretches of injuries. I get it. It makes sense. He did miss some time. That's the thing. The injuries and everything else, and just the players that are coming up. His ranking makes sense. I have no issue with it. I really never had an issue with it, even when it was first announced, and I kind of thought he might still be even just right at that 10th spot. I'm not disappointed. I think it's a good ranking for him, and I think that he'll remain in that spot. So that's a good spot to be in, man. 20 plus years in the NBA, being ranked in the top 15 is ridiculous. So that
Yeah.
is in and of itself. And I do think, like you said, I'm excited for the Lakers season. As a Lakers fan myself, I do think it is going to be a really successful year. We're going to see what we saw in the back quarter of that season throughout the whole year. We brought back that starting five that won us so many games, couple of key pieces that we had last year, and then we brought in some new key bench pieces. So I think that we really built this team well around LeBron and AD, and I think we'll see that last. I think we'll be built tough and built to last. So that'll be a positive change. But speaking of teams that may not be built tough and built to last, the Denver Nuggets, obviously the defending NBA champs. My question to you: are the Denver Nuggets going to go back to back? Are they going to be the first team since the Golden State Warriors? Because no team has gone back to back since the KD led Warriors. Are the Nuggets going to be that team to do it? Are they going to go back to back? What are your thoughts?
To answer that question, I don't think they're going to go back to back. Do I think they're going to be very good? Not. Do I think they're going to be in the running to potentially go back to back? Yes. They're going to be toward the top in the West standings at the end of the year. But I think people are going to figure out how to defend Djokovic, because he's kind of been a cheat code for the Nuggets the last couple of years. He's been up in the running for the MVP the last several. But no, I think the Nuggets, as of right now, are kind of a one and done team. I think they've done it. I think they're going to have a little bit of a lag this year, so to speak, or a hangover, a championship hangover, what people like to call, like, off topic, but the NFL. People talk about the Super Bowl hangover. Will that team make it back? Or will that team win it? And a lot of the times they don't. And I think it's going to be a lot of the same here. The Nuggets were on top of their pedestal. They won their championship. But I don't know if they're going to be sustained. I mean, we saw the Suns a couple of years ago. They were the best regular season team in the NBA. They had one of the best records ever. So, and they kind of fell off. And I do envision a little bit more of a fall off with the Nuggets. I still think they're a top 5 team in the West. They're still going to be good. But I don't think they're going to be top of the West good. What are your thoughts on the Nuggets? Do you think they have what it takes to potentially pull it off, or do you think they're going to be falling back toward the middle of the road?
I have them at 5th right now, finishing the season at 5th. So that's obviously a pretty steep drop. Still missing the play-in, still being a team that's a factor in this, because any team finishing in the top 6 in the West is a contender. Let's be honest. This last season, seeing how competitive the West was, any team in the top 6, you could consider at least a championship or at least a Western Conference contender. So for me, the Nuggets are going to be 5th. What made them so great was their depth. They lost some of that depth. They didn't really build it back up or replace it. They kept the pieces that were really big at play, obviously, but I don't think it's going to transfer to another championship. I think that they're going to struggle early on. I think they're going to have, like you said, a championship hangover. And I don't think we're going to see a team win back-to-back titles in the league at this point. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, could it happen again? Potentially. But I think that this is a league that is so competitive and so back and forth. Who's to say we are going to see another team win it back-to-back in the next few years? I don't think we are, and it's definitely not going to be the Denver Nuggets. I'm sorry.
It's tough.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. It is. That's the thing. It's not a cakewalk. It's not, and it is hard, especially with how many games a season right after winning a championship. That is just so much. It's a lot. So I don't see it happening with anyone, but it's not going to be the Nuggets if it does happen. So that's my take on that. All respect to the Nuggets. Jokic is a great player. Murray is a great player. Porter Jr. is a great player. I mean, they've got a great team. They have a really solid team. They've got, really great built teams still, but what made them so great was their depth. And also, teams in the West stacked up on big men. Teams in the West know what it takes to compete against a Jokic. For example, the Lakers just got Christian Wood to polish off a couple of big men that they picked up in the offseason. That's huge. If we had the big men that we have right now in that series against the Nuggets, we're not getting swept in 4. Are we winning the series? I'm not sure, but we're not getting swept in 4. We didn't have anybody to answer to their big men, and AD is great, but he should be playing power forward at all times. He should not be a center. And 2, he can play center. He should be power forward. And 2, when we beat them in the bubble, yes, it was the bubble, Disney championship, whatever. But the reason we beat them is because we had Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. We had solid big men to slow Jokic and to shut that team down. So it takes that. It takes an army. And I think other teams know that and have stacked up. So I do not have the Nuggets going back to back. And I don't even have them being a top 3 team. Moving on to our final NBA topic. This one is pretty hypothetical, but it's interesting, man. It doesn't feel like it, but this is an Olympic year. I guess it doesn't feel like it because, I mean, not quite, but it is an Olympic year in the next 12 months, but it is not quite 2024 yet, but it is an Olympic year in Paris. The 2024 Olympics are in Paris. It is short because the last ones were obviously delayed for COVID. So we're looking at a shorter time in between, which will make for a really interesting Olympics. If you're a swimming fan or a swimmer like I am, you know that much time that much difference in time off is huge. So it'll be really interesting to see how we compete on all levels. But looking at the basketball side of things, Team USA did not do that well in their last outing of global basketball. Now, do you blame them when their main player being posted is Austin Reeves? I love you, Austin Reeves. You're a great player. But when that is the player that is being hyped up on social media for Team USA, it shows that we don't really have. I mean, he is a role player at the moment. Could he develop into a star? Of course he could. He still has time to develop into a star. At the moment, he's not a star player. So to hype him up like that just shows who we have. So my question to you is this. People are calling for LeBron James to come out. And I think he even may have posted something, which LeBron James will post anything, Mr. Narrative Chaser. So it doesn't mean anything. I think he's teased the Olympics the last couple of times, honestly, even when he hasn't done them. He probably has posted a picture of him in uniform or something. But there is a potential for him to come back. And the question at play is, would that be best? Would a LeBron James led Olympic team get the job done? The answer is pretty obvious in my opinion, as long as he's obviously and all that. But the question is, do we need to be saved by the stars? And if so, who do you want to see suit up? This is hypothetical. It can be not realistic because a couple of my answers are not realistic. Who do you want to see suit up for Team USA going into Paris? And does it need to be star caliber at this Olympics? Because the last one, it really wasn't as star powered. We still won, but we didn't have that star power that we've had in the past.
Yeah, I do think they need to be star led. And I just pulled up an article from The Athletic. And LeBron James is already showing interest in committing to Team USA for next summer. And apparently he's already recruiting other stars like Steph Curry, Durant, Tatum, Davis, Draymond Green. And then the other players showing interest: Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, Aaron Fox, Damian Lillard. All those players would be good. But I'm going to talk about a player that I would love to see suit up. Not because I'm a Heat fan or anything, but just because he happens to be one of the better defensive players in the league right now. And that name is Bam Adebayo. I think any of those guys, that I alluded to that James is trying to recruit to join him is all good. But I want to see Bam Adebayo suit up for Team USA this year because I think having his defensive prowess in the Olympics, he's led the NBA in blocks. He's a hell of a defensive player. He knows how to defend people. So I think any one of those names that LeBron James has mentioned or reached out to is good. But I think they need to go after Bam as well. And I think that will be enough to get Team USA back on top in terms of global ranks in the Olympics. It'll be interesting to see how this team forms up. What are your thoughts? What do you think about maybe getting a player like Bam Adebayo to join all these other star-studded players?
Well, first of all, if LeBron James is in, then it's not going to be hard to see the other stars are in as well because LeBron James is the face of the league. He's the leader of the league. He's the voice. And so when LeBron James talks, the players stop and listen. Honestly, when LeBron James talks, we stop and listen. Do we always want to? Is it always things that everyone wants to hear, especially when he's making up some narrative, talking about retiring, blah, blah? No, I definitely didn't want to hear that after we lost to the Nuggets and got swept. But LeBron James has that quality about him. So he'll have his pick. If Durant is healthy, we're getting Durant. If Curry is healthy, we're getting Curry. All right. If those players are healthy, if AD is healthy, easy. They're on the same team. They might even win a championship together. Let's win a championship and then let's win a gold medal. Come on now. It just goes hand in hand. If those players are healthy, they're on the team. I like Bam. I like a player like maybe Kyrie. I want to see some vets. I want to see some vet leadership. I'm going to throw in a name that is going to maybe be ridiculous, but Dwight Howard has been showing interest in coming out and helping Team USA. And he can still ball. He can still hoop. If he's on the bench, if you can have him on the bench, if you can have some vets, some familiar faces on the bench, I'm going to even throw out a player, which this would more than likely not happen, but bench-wise / vet-wise, like a Derrick Rose, like a Paul George. Let's get some of these players out here that maybe they've had careers with some injuries. Maybe let's fill our team with a good mix of young players, talent like Bam. If you can get the vet leadership and then the stars like the Kate, let's really build an actual team. It's not going to be a dream team-esque team. We're never going to see that type of team again, but let's build a team that's balanced. Do you still bring back some of the players that were on this Team USA team? Not really, in my opinion. Maybe Austin Reeves, you bring him back as a bench piece because he was the player that people, but I don't even think you maybe bring him back if I'm being completely honest.
No.
I will say, if LeBron James is doing the recruiting, we probably will see Reeves back because that Laker connection. And I do think LeBron trusts Reeves, and I think he should. So it's I'm excited, bro. Are we going to see Derrick Rose, Dwight Howard? Are we going to probably not? But I do think Bam is a good pick for one of those younger, more talented players that are still proving themselves and have a lot left of their career left to play and could really make a difference. And then a KD, a LeBron, a Curry, because that will more than likely be all of their last Olympic performances. I don't see any of them. Maybe Curry still plays by the next Olympics, but I don't think so. I think all of those guys would be done. The Bronze, the KDs, that they'll all be long gone. So one more would be awesome. It kind of makes sense. My concern is health. That's my biggest concern for all those guys. Like a Booker, I'm not super concerned for that. But like talking about the KDs and the LeBrons and the ADs, I am concerned about the health. So that determines a lot. But I think whatever happens, we are going to see an Olympic team that is not going to look like the one that the Team USA is not going to look like it did when we just lost, because that was pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, that was very embarrassing. Yeah, I don't want to see any of the other players that were on Team USA in the global like championship on this team. I think having NBA star-studded power is definitely the answer. And if LeBron James has his way, he's going to get those stars to join him in Paris for the 2024 Olympics. So yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see how all this shakes out. I'm sure we'll start hearing about players that are committed or are already on the team for the 2024 Olympics, probably within the next few months, as they prepare throughout their seasons and obviously prepare to go to Paris in the summer. Let's kind of transition over to the major leagues now for baseball. Shohei Ohtani, he ended up hurting his elbow again. This is his second or third time he's done it. He didn't have Tommy John. He had a different surgery. But the big talk with Shohei Ohtani was all the money that he was set up to get through free agency if he stayed healthy. Because obviously he's one of the more potent bats in a lineup. But he's also a pretty decent pitcher as well. And he hurt his elbow this year. He went through surgery, but according to his agent, he'll be ready to hit by next spring. But that's obviously going to hurt his value. It sucks for a guy like him because will he be able to pitch eventually? Yes, but he's not going to be anywhere worth the amount of money. Like I've heard the value of like $500 million for a contract for this guy, which is crazy. And obviously now he's maybe worth half that with his bat. So it's hard saying what he's going to do. If he's going to stay with the Angels until he's fully healthy and then maybe get traded along the way, or will he just go free agency and see if he can get with a team that he can make the playoffs with? My guess is he's going to go with the latter. I think he's going to test his foot in free agency. His locker's been cleared out in that Angels locker room. So I think things are well underway for him to officially become a free agent. What are your takes on Ohtani? Do you think, even with the injury, is he worth all the money that has been rumored to get thrown at him? Do you think it's going to obviously cut into it? I think I know your answer to that. Do you think he stays or do you think he goes?
I think he goes for sure. I do think that his value goes down. but I do think that teams will see beyond that and look at that he's a player where his value when he's healthy will more than likely go right back up. So I think that that will be what the vibe is, and I do think a team will take a chance, but he's not going to get paid as much as he was going to. And also, you have to look at his injuries, and you have to look at the fact that we've seen a couple of things and issues with him, and patterns that teams might not super be. They might not super. They might not take that super big jump and take that big risk with him, and that's fine because even in baseball, injuries can dismantle a team. I know the lineups are different, the makeup is different, but that can dismantle a team. And if he is your starting pitcher or just a high up pitcher and he's one of your guys and he's out, that's huge. His foot's been out of the Angels' door before the injury. He's wanted to get out before that, and I don't blame him. Being that talented of a player, matching up with an equally talented player and not getting it done is frustrating. So I understand him being done with the Angels. He'd be done with the Angels without anything going on. He'd be done with the Angels. But this injury, this everything, it's a perfect out. The surgery is a perfect out. The not being able to pitch and not being able to bat is a perfect out. And I think that yes, he's really injured. Yeah, or not, yes, he really obviously needs a surgery. Yes, he really has stuff that needs to be fixed and for his career moving forward, it's crucial that this happens. But I also think this is a business move for him, and he's ready to move on from the Angels locker room because if that wasn't the case, his stuff would still be in the Angels locker room. So he's been ready to be out of there. He's been ready to leave that situation, and I don't completely blame him. So I get it. But again, he's not going to get the money he was going to, because it's not the best idea to pay him that much
if
under
he
the
can't do one of the things.
exactly. And who's to say he'll come back and be able to do both of them as well as he was before? I don't think that's going to be the case, but teams are smarter than just pulling that trigger. But a team is still going to pay him. A team is still going to go for him because you understand, even if you have one of his skill sets, that's still a top end level skill set in the MLB. So a team is going to pull the trigger. He's not going to be an angel. Again, the money is not going to reach near what it was before, but he's still going to get paid.
Oh yeah, he'll get paid. Nowhere near where it was rumored to be at, but he's still a good enough player. He's probably the best player of this generation by far. Before he was in the league, it was Mike Trout. Obviously with all his accolades and stuff, statistic wise. So yeah, he'll find a spot. He's going to be on a playoff contending team next year. Where that may be, I don't know. I think it may very well be with the Dodgers or potentially like the Yankees or something like that. Someone who has big money. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, more news will come out for Shohei probably once the playoffs are done within the next month and a half or so. So once we hear more, obviously we'll talk about it more. Let's transition over to our picks to win the World Series this year. There are a lot of teams that are pretty close in the standings right now. Why don't you take it away, man? Who's your pick to win it all?
Well, first and foremost, this has been a pretty exciting season. We have not talked too seriously about it just because it's such a long season. We're not going to sit here and talk about it all day, every day, every episode. But it has been an exciting year. I don't know about you. Your team, of course, doesn't look like it's their year. They're closer, I will say. I think that it's more their year than it's been. But I definitely think they've got some time left, of course. My team, the Yankees, I think they're another team that still has some time left before they're really going to make a push. I will be honest. I am not shocked by some of these top teams like the Dodgers. Are we really shocked? The Dodgers are a great team. We're not shocked by that. A team like the Orioles, though, Baltimore, their consistency from the start of the year to now, I didn't see that coming. As a matter of fact, I think towards the end of season 2 of the Connor and Heffernan show, we talked about how we didn't think Baltimore was going to be able to keep it up. Maybe that was who made that take. It probably was. I've made some pretty ridiculous takes on this show, I will admit. So that might have been my take. But I mean, it's not super ridiculous when they have not been that team. But if I'm being honest, out of all the teams that are leading the pack, if there's my pick for the World Series winner, spoiler alert, I already said them. I got the Baltimore Orioles. I think that they have been so consistent. Do they have the star power, the marquee names that some of these other teams have? No, but I think they have the consistency and they have the depth to get it done. So I'm going with the Orioles. I think they're going to win it all.
Yeah, I think the Orioles are up there. But my picks with the Braves. The Braves have been incredible this year. Obviously, a lot of really good teams, but you're talking about consistency. The Braves have been the definition of consistency all year long. They've blown out a lot of teams in their baseball games, and blowing out teams in baseball is pretty difficult. So the Braves are definitely my pick. The Orioles are definitely right up there too, because the Orioles have been really hot. They're gonna win the East in the American League. So yeah, it should be fun, man. I'm excited for playoff baseball.
No, me too, bro. I think baseball's awesome, but the most exciting time to watch the MLB is playoff. If it's not in person and live, the most exciting time to watch it is playoff baseball. And we'll definitely have more time to cover it and cover the series themselves. Once they're set up, we'll cover those. So I'm excited. I'm hype. I think if you're a baseball lover, you're gonna hear a lot of baseball in the next few episodes. And represent. I'm not representing. I'm representing Midland Swim and Dive. So I'm not showing up. But you got the hat on too, bro. Right? Flip that thing around. Let's see. Yeah,
it's the World Series hat too from 2015.
Oh yeah, that was the time. You know what? Before we end, because this is the end of our show, but the Royals. Okay, before we hopped on, you said they're coming. They're coming.
Yeah.
Deion's coming. That's what. Okay, that's your vibe. Do you really think? How when do you think they'll be back in contention?
I think next year. Next
Wow.
year. The American League Central is awful. It has been awful the last couple of years. All the Royals need to do is get off to a better start in April and May. If they got off to a better start in April and May, they would be up toward the top with the Twins right now. Because no team has really pulled away in that division. I think if they can draft well in the offseason, get a couple of key pieces, plus they've got a pretty decent farm system right now, bring some of those players up and develop them, I think the Royals have a contending team next year. This kind of gives me vibes from the 2012, 2013, 2014, where you start seeing that subtle incline in production and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting, but I think if they can build the team around Bobby Witt Jr., I think they can be right up there.
Agreed.
Yeah. Bobby Witt's definitely going to be one of the better baseball players to ever play the game by the time his career's done.
Oh no, yeah. They've got a squad. They've got potential. And like you said, they also have the luck of being where they are in the conference. I mean, that they've got it. They've dominated before, and they're right at the door for that. I can see that as well. I'm not a fan, but I'm not a hater. I support I support the Rockies. I support the Royals. I support those local. I'm from Nebraska. I can't help it. You gotta support those local teams. So can't say the Rockies have been even as good as the Royals have the last 10, 20 years, but the Rockies have seen some up and down success. So Who knows? Gotta show support for those neighboring states. What can I say?
Yep, absolutely. Should be exciting to watch. Obviously, we'll continue covering all of this as playoffs get underway for baseball, and then obviously football season just got started, so we'll have a lot more to talk about with that. Basketball season's getting to start, so stay tuned for some more exciting content. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, at Connor and Heffernan Show. And yeah, as always, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.